you. So, you're all very welcome. We're delighted to be here for the second year. We are Faro. That was young Seamus on the pipes. Let's hear it one time for Seamus. All right. We're just going to do one more song for you, okay? We're going to do one more song, and then obviously we're welcoming some guests that we're very, very, very excited to hear talking after that. And then we'll be around later to bring you right back crashing down to earth as well after you're all inspired and optimistic. So we're going to do one song that we were asked to do, and it's an amazing story. We've never sang it before, so if you want to sing the chorus with us, you'd be helping us. This is Henry Joy, obviously a true story of a true hero, and I hope you enjoy it. 2, 3, 4. On a warm summer late evening, on a field outside Glenarm, there was 2 young fellas resting. They had toiled their father's farm, when a tall gentleman rider approached them with a smile, saying, "Brothers, would you listen for a while?" It's the chorus, so listen. He says, "Our country's called Ireland, it's the garden of the earth. I dreamed of the future where our people know their worth, where the laws are written by reason, not landlords, kings, or priests. You can have this, boys, if you would walk with me." Well, all people want freedom, so came the 2 replies. But more people fear treason, the redcoats and their spies. But the tall rider embraced them. "I have true men in Belfast. I am Henry, I'll be faithful to the last. For the proud armies of Ulster boast 20,000 men, from the dark alleys of Belfast, north down and Antrim's glens. Sure, we rose yesterday morning and threw the gauntlet down, and tomorrow, boys, we enter Antrim town. Singing, our country's called Ireland, it's the garden of the earth. And I dream of a future where our people know their worth, where the laws are written by reason, not landlords, kings, or priests. You can have this, boys, if you would walk with me." Before them, they stormed the barracks gate. Let our proud nation adorn them, every man there knew his fate. They had no rifle or cannon, nor wages from the crown, but the redcoats stood in line and shot them down. To the dark, cold Belfast mountain, the rebels they laid low. To a dark and wattled cottage, young Henry did go. There were no French boats approaching, or allies from the south. Not a word of doubt came from Henry's mouth. Oh, cold, tired, and hungry, young Henry made his vow. From your proud mothers I stole you, and I won't desert you now. We are sons of the Republic, not panthers but free men, and it's never to be the same again. Try singing if you know it. Singing, our
this, boys, if you would walk with me.
Thank you so much. We'll see you later on.
So, good evening, everyone. It is a huge honour for me to be your host tonight. I am Liz Gillis. I am an historian, and I've written a lot of books about the Irish Revolutionary period, and I just have to say it is a huge honour for me to be here tonight to host this evening's sessions. But just a few bit of housekeeping before we get started. In case, in the event of an emergency, just the emergency exits are just behind you, left and right hand side. We've just heard from Faro, and we're going to hear more from them later on, but it was actually quite fitting that we've just heard the song Henry Joy McCracken, who was a member of the United Irishmen, an organisation that was dedicated to uniting the Irish people, and we've heard from the earlier sessions about how we do that today. And that organisation would have had a big influence on the man we're here to remember tonight, who the festival is named after, Robert Tressell, because while he was in South Africa, he was involved in the 1798 centenary events. We are very honoured to have a very special guest here this evening. So everyone, if I could just get you please to be upstanding to welcome our President, Michael D. Higgins, and his wife, Sabina Higgins. But now, everyone, it gives me the great pleasure to introduce a very important figure, Seamus McDonagh, who is the chair and founder of the Robert Tressell Festival Organising Committee. So would you please welcome Seamus McDonagh.
Comrade friends, good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Seamus McDonagh. It's with immense gratitude that I stand before you as the founder of the Robert Tressell Festival. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to the dedicated members of the Tressell Festival Committee, whose tireless efforts have made this event possible. Tonight we gather to celebrate the enduring legacy of a remarkable man whose words continue to inspire and resonate with the audience worldwide. Robert Tressell, born Robert Noonan, was an Irish writer and social activist best known for his novel Ragged-Trousered Philanthropists. Published posthumously in 1914, Tressell works delves into the struggles of the working class in the early 20th century England, shedding light on the issues of economic inequality, exploitation, and dehumanizing effects of capitalism. His poignant portrayal of the plight of the ordinary workers serves as a timeless reminder of the importance of social justice and the need for collective action to address systematic injustice. In honor of Tressell's enduring legacy, we come together each year to celebrate his life and work through the Robert Tressell through a serious discussion and performances. We seek to keep his spirit alive and to continue the conversation he started over a century ago. Tonight, I am thrilled to have the privilege of introducing a man who shares Tressell's commitment to social injustice and equality, Michael D. Higgins, the President of Ireland. President Higgins has dedicated his life to public service, advocating for the rights of the marginalised communities and champion causes related to culture, education and sustainability. His unwavering dedication to promoting equality and inclusivity embodies the principle that Robert Tressell held dear. Please join me in welcoming the President, Michael D. Higgins. Thank you.
Dear friends and brothers and sisters of the trade union movement, a gwini córa fad, cuirinse ohusarum, páirte glachu agus muide kilúras dan tarn iflian. An amos atá tiltje ag Robert Tressell agus a gohoirithe an aber intach a cuirsir for and Ragged-Trousered Philanthropist. Dear friends, may I first of all thank Jack O'Connor and Seamus McDonough for the invitation to be with you, and I thank them for their kind words of introduction. It was a great pleasure to receive the invitation, and I'm delighted to be part of an event now in its second year that has achieved a unique character for reflection and celebration of the power of the collective and, above all, of the consciousness that makes the collective effective. And for all of those involved in the trade union movement and those supportive in diverse ways of not just workers' rights but also of a fulfilled life, indeed all those with an interest in social justice and the achievement of such balance between ethical society and economy as will lead to a more equal appreciation of opportunity for life, fulfillment and love of all people. This annual gathering takes its title and pays tribute to the famous book, The Ragged-Trousered Philanthropists, as I have said, and its author, Robert Noonan, who wrote under that nom de plume, Robert Tressell, not accidentally the use of the term Tressell, as it is used as a painter. It is important to recognize the belief and commitments his daughter Kathleen must have had too, because we should always remember, without her belief in her father and her commitment to the importance of what he put on paper, is the reason that we have the Ragged-Trousered Philanthropists, sometimes known as the Painter's Bible, a working class classic. I do say it is my encouragement to you that the last copy got in Charlie Brown in Galway cost €5, but I recommend people, for many reasons, to try and read the book itself in tribute to Noonan, because it stands, you will get more from it than from the many interpretations, I believe. Because its characters, their language, their strategies for survival, stands as a very great refutation of those who in their time questioned the existence of any such thing as a culture of the working class. There is a curious parallelism in relation to Joyce and Ulysses and the language that surfaces in it. But for me, the great strength of Robert Tressell is, in fact, the full vocabulary and the new words and the interpretations that are there in the conversations between those as they move from job to job. And I think that is incredibly important, because everything is identified by being named And this in turn will come to the distinction between the living, breathing, suffering, humorous lives of those who are meeting to scamp a living every day, and the types who are abstracted from an unaccountable capitalism. Like, for example, I think it is Sir Greed Enclosure and his wife, the people, for example, who are in, if you like, the benevolent society that you encounter in the book. I said, together with later expositions on the growing poverty of the early 20th century, such as much later George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier, which dealt with the 1930s, the Ragged-Trousered Philanthropist is perceived by some commentators as having had an influence on the possibility of election of a transformational Labour government in Britain in 1945. It is important that I think that George Orwell writing in 1937 of The Road to Wigan Pier, commenting afterwards saying that everybody should read, all workers should read, The Ragged-Trousered Philanthropist. And of course, both books share the same experience in relation to the conservatism which seeps through the printing industry, is that the fuller, unabridged versions of both books had to wait a considerable time before they could be published. When one thinks, I think, as well, of the period in which he's writing, and what came later afterwards, taking both books together and their legacy, that Labour government during the years 1945 to 51 gave birth to what we now know as the welfare state. It led the establishment of the National Health Service by Aaron Bevan, which gave free health care to all British citizens, and other reforms to welfare benefits. Recently I've been asked to look back on what was happening in Ireland in many cases. 100 years ago, in 1924, the minority report of Tom Johnson, Mr. Buckley, was being rejected in favour of the majority report, so that the remaining lands surrounding the domain estates would be divided among many, but it included all those who already had got land, and very many of the cattle graziers who were going to build a huge new empire, and would in time actually show their commitment to heritage by having their cattle in the houses, and then later they would sell the lead, and therefore sometimes, if the matters got impatient, you should burn the house to make sure the land was distributed. 1924 saw the exodus from the Curragh. In December of the year before, my father had left hut number 3 in the Curragh. He is not inheriting land, not going to get any land, and so forth, spent 1924 unemployed. But in this period, 45-51, which is preceded by the work of Tressell and by that book, The Road to Wigan Pier, what was happening in Ireland? What was happening in Ireland, I wasn't alone because I had given other papers on this subject, was basically that 24, not only is the defeat of that report, the minority report of the Agricultural Commission would have in fact kept the machinery that was in the houses and the glass houses of the big houses, created opportunities for production of vegetables, their sale in the local market. They would have used the houses for different purposes. That was rejected. But I think it's in that year as well, we see a much underestimated, much underreported. There is a strike by the newly organised Union of Farmers against the organised labourers, the agricultural labourers, and most of them emigrated to England. 3 years before Attlee's government came to power in 1942, William Beveridge had produced the Beveridge Report, which spelled out a system of social insurance that suggested a covering of every citizen regardless of income. I must say at this stage in Ireland in the parallel thing, while you had that out-migration, which took away a huge, potentially radical section of the population, and it enabled land to become settled, and in collusion with the church, you got a notion, if you like, of subsidiarity, opposition to the state, and this would continue right into the period. But I do think that when I often think of the Beveridge Report and that response of 1945 to 51, you must bear in mind, too, that it might have been as much a threat of such militancy as might emerge and which was present already in parts of Europe, rather than any developing benign outrage to poverty that became a powerful influence, one that saw the necessity and benefit of state action, and which, of course, would be executed through Keynesian policies. The Beveridge Report had, in fact, outlined the case, if you like, for a welfare state. I should say that in relation to that is thrown up as I reflected back on not only Tressell's work but other work about this strange affair in the public consciousness with poverty. The transition in Britain, for example, from 1760 to 1830, usually the rough figures associated with the Industrial Revolution, sometimes hide something, and there is as well the philosophical developments of the time, the influence of the panopticon, which meant that the workers had to be controlled at every movement, and thus at the opening of Pentonville, the people who were present are in fact the factory owners who throw their silk hats in the air as the Prince of Wales opens Pentonville, because the factory and the prison system have identical histories in the British history, a point not sufficiently noted. And I think this is something that in relation to European parallels has been well noted, of course, by above all Foucault. In Ireland, I remember as well, not long into my own political career, when poverty was discovered in 1974 in Kilkenny at a conference. And that was set up, which was very, very, very much something students which I taught myself that took part in combat poverty. It was something outrageous, it was felt, that those who were at the other side of the table, the poor, would have somebody actually engaged in dialogue and contradiction with somebody who had been appointed by the state. This already drew great, great outrage in Great Britain next door. And it would come to be that combat poverty, established in 2008, and which was somehow a movement beyond the subsidiarity that had been there in a collusion between church and state, would now be destroyed, in fact, actually, by a kind of a jealous Weberian version of bureaucracy that said it had to be got rid of. And got rid of it was. And that raises a point with me in relation to something about which is now, I think, being contradicted by very many young people, particularly those young people who have been agitating in support and heinous outrage at what is taking place in Gaza, and good luck to them and how good they are. But it is interesting across the literature, both in the social subjects and also in the fictional literature. There is this notion that it is part of the ordinary, that you must have a poor to be looking at, that you must have, in fact, people that you look and you're outraged every now and again, just to keep the blood flowing, as it were. But that you would not need to do anything about it. And that is why I am so pleased to be in Liberty Hall, and so pleased to be among not passive trade unionists, but active trade unionists. And I recall myself as a young university teacher coming back from Manchester University, where I spoke a few weeks ago, and where things I wish were better. But I have to say, when it was said that one of the important things, a number of us, because there had been a surge And free education in the 1960s, that second level, meant that you had a surge into the universities. And in 1969, when people like myself and others, I said we should really be part of a union. And I founded the Workers' Union of Ireland teaching section. And I remember going with Cad Erasmus and myself to a junior school like this. We're on a campaign that covered all of the third level colleges. He was organising for the Irish Federation of University Teachers. I was organising for the Workers' Union of Ireland teaching section, which I had founded. And the reason it was interesting was he more or less in the end got everyone over associate professor level, and I got most of the people underneath, below that. But we had about 200 in the first year. But my reason at that time was interesting was I was in favour of the general union, because so that we would, all those of us who cleaned the offices, that those who cleaned their labs, that those who worked in the labs, scientists and people who worked in the grounds of the university, would all be in the one union. And it was about that kind of solidarity. And it is why there is a difference between those. And I want to take tribute today to people that don't get enough thanks, I think, in the history. I recall the people who gathered the dues from the members of they would get from the members of the trade union. And then in '69, the first piece of work I did was with Dockers in Galway. Now, the Dockers in Galway annual general meeting was a very lively affair. At that particular time, I was preparing the work, and they were members of the Irish Transport and General Workers Union. But let me put it like this. I spent a year with them in 1969 down at the docks, where the conditions were there were 72 dockers listed, and technically we were supposed to have 3 gangs, but there were in fact 58 able-bodied men. But they divided the revenue that came in from the boats among the 72. And of the 58, who was going to work in the gangs? The stevedore put up a list on Mrs. Copeland's window at the corner, and that's who worked. But when I spent with Martin Murray and the others, and with John O'Healy, who had the name of Strike Healy, but I think that there was a tradition there of the collective. And not often, this is something I wanted to move well beyond. When you talk to many cases, the dockers in Galway had a dockers band. They didn't have glorious uniforms, and they didn't throw things in the air and catch them as they came down. But what they did have was, in the full, what they dressed as they were, they paraded through the street. And in that way, the collective expression through song and poetry and so forth is so important. Because this is what we must remember. We are not alive to be useful on the terms of those who would exploit us. We are alive to live and love. And what, in fact, Oscar Wilde is so right in saying that. It isn't only about providing work and providing dignity in work. It is about providing the space to live. And that means, therefore, that the agenda has to be one of deep and fundamental change. Yes, we go from little gain to little gain, but the structural change is incredibly important. The debate, I think, that floated around that time, after in the 1940s and others that came, was a debate about universalism and what it might mean. And I remember as a student and as a young academic, and I taught his work with great joy, with Richard Titmuss, former professor of social philosophy at the London School of Economics, and one of the great intellectual theorists of Britain's welfare state and the National Health Service. And how moved I was to read the letter that is there at the end of his life, saying, I am dying in a public ward in the most wonderful of circumstances, surrounded by people who are equally entitled to the same level of the highest care as I am receiving. because his vision was one symbolized by a culture and a belief in institutions of social solidarity, one that was delivered by institutions such as the National Health Service, that great human achievement from which so many Irish immigrants that I've referred to everywhere. 250,000 Irish left Ireland between 1955 and 60, including my sisters immigrating at the age of 20 to the British National Health Service, to the British Rail Service. British Rail provided you with a ticket from the nearest railway station, and they provided you with a hostel as if you were working in their cafeteria. But that version of universalism, which Titmuss elucidated in that brilliant 1970 book, The Gift Relationship, constitutes a manifesto of the advantages of a free health system over a privatized version, and in a way, anthropologically, of how altruism binds societies together, building people's capacity to care for each other. And that is why, for example, war and commitment to war and the whole military-industrial complex is such a great, little less I call it now, than a great species failure and humankind. Thatcherism, on the other hand, consciously set out to quench universalism in policy, contesting the very concept of society itself, supplanting references to it with a neoliberalism that had an attractive appeal to individuation. When I was young, starting out in politics, I used Coat Tony. And I would say at Labour Party conferences, often Labour at night, I think they used to give me a late slot, now that I think about it. But I would say to them, Tony wrote in one of his pieces, he said, "Why is it that tadpoles seem to put up with their miserable existence? Is it not that they hope that one day one of their number will spring a jaw and leap to earth and become a frog?" And thus you had that kind of individuation, that freedom is now going to be defined as a freedom to remove things out of your way in a personal, individual sense, and without any sense of consequences for anybody else. And of course, Thatcherism gave us a spate of anti-union laws. And I think of the great communities of the miners, laws that continue to make strike action difficult to this day. And I think attempting to make industrial action either illegal or unsuccessful. I would say to people before today that joining the union was, and it remains today, the best opposition to this particular attack on democracy. And I say, as we all go home from tonight or whenever, if there's one thing we must do, just don't accept that joining the union is the best protection that a worker can have. But make your mind up that you will pick a number of people that you know and go to them and become an activist, not a passive person, and say to them, have you thought of joining the union? And go to the union with and bring them and celebrate us like the great music we've heard from Faro and so on. And as I reflect on that trade union movement all my lifetime, I'm struck by how clearly certain aspects of it have retained a special place in my memory. The image I recover is of banners and bands and marches and speeches, great speeches which people would debate on the way home, and some of the phrases of which they would make their own. And that was a subject I actually described in my poem of Saturdays Made Holy. Mary McPartland and I were doing gigs around the country, and I had promised I would be right before, even though the presidential election was on, that I would fulfill my promise, and we did those, and I'm so pleased that I did. And she was a trade unionist, feminist, organizer, and sadly had cancer. But I think there is a proud tradition, and it makes its way into the hearts of those who are struggling from freedom in different ways. I think of the 100 songs in different languages that are on the theme, I'm off to join the union. And many early trade union organizers, including the well-known labor activist, now Swedish-American Joe Hill, realized the importance of culture of time spent together, of music shared, of songs in whose rendering workers competed for excellence. And that was true of the docks, of the mines, of the factories. And it is part of the symbolic life of a collective that shares the values of universalism. And it is the very antithesis of extreme individualism. From that sprang such great movements as the American Civil Rights Movement, the anti-apartheid movement, equal rights movements. Those who were trying to break ground could look to artists in particular and to members in the trade union movement for support. And it is important that in all parts of this island, we acknowledge the role of the trade union movement from its very beginning, down to our times in opposing sectarianism. I remember going to Northern Ireland and meeting the members of the two communist parties, of the different groups and so forth. And I acknowledge again their consistent opposition to sectarianism. The trade unions are giving leadership now and is taking the opportunity to provide a strong voice in support of universalism, in support of a strong welfare state. That has an argument that is in fact so empirically based. I recall very, very much visiting Colombia, when in fact the group who in Ireland first recognized the assassination of Colombian trade unionists. The Irish trade union movement did. And I recall when I went to Chile, as observer del Runo de Plebiscito, who in fact actually asked me to go. The Chilean families who were here in Ireland, and to the people who tried to help me with the trade union movement. So as we reflect on Robert Tressell, I suggest that his genius was the significance he accorded to the human figures of his workers. And they have a whole language that is very important. As I have said, he could use types for the people, for example, that I have described already, who were representing capitalism. But what he was doing, and it is maybe insufficiently recognized, was revolutionizing the genre and contributing to what might be socialist realism in the English novel. That's what you get in the long text that the Ragged-Trousered Philanthropist is. It is an epic portrait of working class existence and life in the throes of imperialism. In his novel, an impoverished group of workers takes center stage. There is this a shared experience of exploitation and the sharing in meanings of feelings of the exploited, which constitutes a culture that has composition and capacity for radical change. And there is in the novel itself the moment which is called the Great Oration, where somebody decides, and then there's the great example of where the people using knives and forks and cutlery and shows the cutting of bread and so forth, of how capitalism works. And the lesson that Tressell is telling us there, you must know how they're doing it. You must know how they're fooling you if you're going, in fact, to replace them. And that is as important today as elsewhere, as to how the glib statements were made, as if, in fact, there is no other way, as Mrs. Thatcher put it, or indeed as so many people in lazy politics will put it in many ways. This is which has to be like this. I think that is very, very important. An important theme in the novel is what is called the scamping of work. Jenny Farrell has written of Misery, one of the character, commands the workers non-stop to slobber it on, cover dirt, cracks and structural weaknesses for long enough for the profits to be pocketed. Now, while that was archetypal of the nature of capitalist work ethic, it also epitomizes something else, the kind that of alienation of which Marx and Weber wrote within industrial society, which came to characterize the service imperialist society. Just think of it depending where you were having your drink in the 19th century. Or even you might hear people in Ireland saying it. The sun never sinks on our empire. But the sun went up in the morning on the poverty that was being created, and it went down in the evening with an increase in that poverty. And all of that mattered. And that is the importance of Tressell. I see in many cases as well what is in the book is It is the way the characters are really saying. How is it that they come, that we're accepting the conscious somehow, that we're in a system that can't be changed? There's a lovely Irish parallel that occurred to me as I was looking at the book again. And it is as the Liberal who wins the election goes down after giving his congratulations, his thank you speech and congratulations. And he goes into his carriage. And the people are so overwhelmed in enthusiasm of the affair that they take the horses out from under the carriage and they put the harness on themselves and they run around with it. When King George V visited with Queen Mary in Connemara years ago and went on to stay in Leenane, there was a family. Now, many families have the same name, but the family, that section of it, they did the exact same thing. Near recess. And to this day, if you wanted to know which branch of that family we're talking about, some are referred to as the Coppellini, the ponies. I think it shows, too, in many cases, of how important education is in the trade union movement, how important it is that we acknowledge the solid day-to-day work that is done by officials, as I said, the shop stewards, and all those who keep the trade union going. I think that the Ragged-Trousered Philanthropists, along with the Road to Wigan Pier that I have quoted, and so forth, I think the Road to Wigan Pier was deeply moving when I read it for the first time, with its bleak conditions among the working class of Lancashire and Yorkshire in the industrial north of England. And also showing in a way how you could recognise poverty. Isn't it awful? Notice as people today feel free to watch on television the malnutrition and dehydration of infants and then go on to the next newscast and so on. This is exactly the same way as what is it that blinds us from the rage that should occur in one and the actions that should follow. I think George Orwell himself was so pleased with the Ragged-Trousered Philanthropists when he tells us of reading it, that 1 million copies of the book have been sold. But an unabridged version with Robert Noonan's ending could only be published as late as 1955. That is why you have to fight for your space. For example, in the same way as those who oppose the military-industrial complex have to fight for their space to contradict it, which is outrageous. That those who oppose war have to fight for the space to make the case for peace. Because in 1955, not so long ago, early publishers removed much of the socialist ideology from the first edition. And it was the same with the Road to Wigan Pier in 1969. in 1969, I read another book that put me in mind of both of those. I was in Manchester at this time, and I knew Cliff Slaughter. And it was the book by Norman Dennis, Fernando Henriquez and Clifford Slaughter, which was Coal is Our Life, an analysis of a Yorkshire mining community and its relationship between the working environment and the family and leisure rules. You must remember, for example, that those who are serious about critiquing writing in English literature, I think sometimes haven't accorded sufficient importance to the significance of the factory system. What happened now? The act of sex was to be at night time, the act of darkness, and so forth. In the same way, everything about one's body, everything about the structure of social life and so forth was affected by the factory system. And that's why you have in the book to which I'm paying tribute this evening, all the way from Easton's baby through to Jack London, who dies in a workhouse, a life of hard labour. Ginny Faro wrote, while the working class characters are individualised, the bosses are types. Working life potentially encompasses all aspects of truly human living. While the ruling class is beyond consideration as a human way of life, its purpose being to thwart the workers' free development. Therefore, what you got in many cases is that brilliant thing which Noonan had of being able to extract the elements of the exploitation and compose it into a type, and then you gave it a name, like as I have mentioned, Sir Robert Enclosure, and so forth. I think that it is Tressell's book. There's a lovely moment in it, as I've discovered, when Frank Owen gives an example of what he calls the great money trick. I think that key chapter, he employs his workmates cutting up the bread to illustrate how the employer who does not work generates personal wealth, while the workers effectively remain no better off than when they began, endlessly swapping coins back and forth for food and wages. So that was Tressell's practical way of showing. You must actually understand how it's happening, and you must understand how it can be changed. A major recurring theme in the work is how you must get over the inability and the reluctance of workers for the sheer simple of tiredness to comprehend or contemplate an alternative economic paradigm. And this is another interesting issue where there is one of the great fallacies that has in fact continued from Plato's famous allegory of the cave. This is the suggestion, you see, that because you haven't experienced any alternative, you won't be therefore able to understand it. I so strongly reject that, no more than I did, in fact, actually, the notion of, for example, within Marxist writing, of the notion of a class that didn't understand their position. I suggest that the anthropological work of James C. Scott and others, and I have pointed this out, means that always those who were exploited were continuously constructing strategies not just of survival, but also of being able to undermine and plot the end of that which is the source of their exploitation. But that is all for another day. But I have to just say, as I come to an event that will be celebrating with music, etc., I think the rights of workers are safest in the atmosphere of trade unions that are active, and trade unions that are really not only speaking about work and its nature and content, which is so important, but also of the need to the lives of workers. Because let us remember, membership of the trade unions has achieved so much. It would be dishonest of me if I didn't say how concerned I am that the figures are so low. I do say to every young person, look for your friends and get them to join the union. Because I think the idea that trade union membership falling to 40%, or only a quarter of the workforce as members of trade unions, or very particularly that those between 16 and 24, the good news is that women are joining the union and that women workers are making such a significant, valuable change in the nature of trade unions. And I salute that. But also I think that but too many sectors remain outside of union membership or demonstrate low membership rates. And there are areas which desperately need organisation. Hospitality, and information and communications. But I think in many cases as well, one of the good news is that after it collapsed, imploded on its own contradictions, the so-called neoliberal agenda in relation to economics has collapsed. And now it is clear that not only is there a contribution in relation to the new forms of social economy being led by trade unionists, but it shows that they are winning the field. They are the place of the good economics. They're the place of the empirically proved and tested theorems. They are the people who are able to show a kind of economy that is able to transfer beyond borders. They're people who are able to read global trends, who offer us the only accountability that is possible on the implications and consequences of science and technology. I think that in that case, the trade unions, there is a such. For those at the moment, let us be clear, two great aims of humanity in my time, in recent times, the acceptance of sustainability and responding adequately to climate change, are both being defeated as we speak by the industrial military complex. The industrial military complex remains as the most dangerous, unaccountable entity that is there on the planet. And it is the requirement of all of us who see this and believe it. For example, the idea that spokespersons for the industrial military complex are interchangeable at public sessions with people who are elected. We don't know which one is which because they are both the same. It is time the public let the people know the difference. And that will happen, I believe, and it is so important. I think workers, for example, it is very, very important. What I think about this event today, tomorrow, and Tressell number 2, as you like, is that it began with singing, and it will end with singing. And it has been punctuated by the stuff of not just stuff of the mind, but also the stuff of the heart. And I have, at difficult times in my own health, in many cases, looking back, I think, and I'm so grateful for all of the great opportunities that Sabina and I and the others have been able to share with those with whom we marched for different things. And with your permission, I'd like to read my poem that I wrote for Mary McPartlin, singer, feminist, trade unionist, organizer. And it's one I wrote since I became president. Of Saturdays made holy. Today's a Saturday, let there be many more Saturdays, but Saturdays in which we will. Of Saturdays made holy. The night is long and I awake, recall the making of the march on those Saturdays made holy. The beat of feet behind banners that bore the glory of the words, a call for a life made equal. Banners held steady for the speech, gold-threaded, fringed, and eyeletted with care for the carrying to defeat the opposing breeze, borne by arms made strong from work of mind, of hand and heart. Those words sent out to cheers as such for now. They are not gone, there is the memory of how they danced without restraint, skipping back and forth, to cheers in joyful subversion of the ordinary. The echo of that beat of feet behind banners on Saturdays made holy is slow to come. Can it be that it is lost, perhaps forgotten? Surely not still, for in the long sweep of history and the stories that will be told, others will hear of how behind banners they marched, women and men and children too, on Saturdays made holy. It will be told of how they sometimes won and often lost, if never defeated. It will matter that they sometimes wept, unfolding for another day, those banners that carried words emancipatory. The night, though long and dawn so slow in breaking, yet morning light glorious reveals how from those arrows, fledged in history that missed their mark in darkness, have sprung in light some frail trees of hope. In other times, an old planet weary finds new life, renewal from the music of the heart. And now a new song emerges, from behind banners gold-threaded, again made sacred, on Saturdays made holy, with words emancipatory, as voices rise in unison, and sing of love and a new day for all humanity. Thank you very much.
Everyone, just to lead us into the interval, and maybe as you reflect on the words that the President spoke, listen, sit back, relax, and listen to the music, to the songs that are now going to be played by a very talented group of musicians. Ladies and gentlemen, Faro.
Dance to your shadow, it's good to be living, lad. Dance to your shadow when there's nothing better near you. Dance to your shadow when it's good to be living, lad. Dance to your shadow when there's nothing better near. Dance to your shadow when it's good to be living, lad. Dance to your shadow when there's nothing better near. Dance to your shadow when it's good to be living, lad. Dance to your shadow when there's nothing better near you. Ho, ro, ha-da-da-da, ho, ro. ha-da-da-da ho-ro, ha-da-da-da hin, ha-da-da-da ro, ho-ro, ha-da-da-da ho-ro, ha-da-da-da ho-ro, ha-da-da-da hindi han, ho-ro, ha-da-da-da ho-ro, ha-da-da-da ho-ro, ha-da-da-da hindi han done. There are tunes in the river otter, pools in the river water, pools in the river, and the river calls him. There are tunes in the river otter, pools in the river water, pools in the river, and the river calls him. Hin, hin, ha-da-da-da hin, hin, ha-da-da-da hin, hin, ha-da-da-da hin, ha-da-da-da ro, ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da hindi han, ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da hindi han, ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da hindi han, ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da ho, ro, ha-da-da-da hindi han done. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I should have said, just at the beginning, we sang Henry Joy. I'd like to dedicate that one to Scott Miller, who asked us to be here. It's a truly an honor for us to come back for our second year here. Although the next song I would like to dedicate instead to my partner, who you heard singing at the end of that last song. We're expecting a baby in August, our first child. So, there's a Northern Irish team going here. I think we'll sing Newry Mountain for Andrea now, okay? At the foot of Newry Mountain there runs a stream where I met my true love, sweet Molly, her name. She's slender in waist, all the boys they can see, but to her lover she is known as Groya Mochri. my darling was here. Oh, the bright moon may darken, oh, the stars lose their shine. The green of the moor may blacken with blight, and the rocks they may crumble and fall to the sea. If ever I prove false to my own sweet Croyalmo, like the quilt of the finest silk is her pale white chest, and her bosom's the swans that I confess. Oh, and may out the sea grow an apple tree. Ever I prove false to my own sweet Croyalmo free. Oh, if ever I prove false to my own Croyalmo. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go to a little bit of Bulgaria now. Thank you. All right. So we're nearly through our set, but it's your turn now. Last year, the audience sang like a choir. No expectations, but if you want to sing out, we would love you to sing O Roshid of Ahawalia with us now. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. Just want to thank you again anyway. I'm doing a gig in Tunisia next week for Palestine, representing Ireland, and I'm emboldened. No, it's honestly just a privilege to be emboldened and inspired by everything we've heard today. So, thank you again. Let's give one more round of applause for the President of Ireland here. Oh, Sheila van Boleyn, waar wij graag to a vein, yeah, in the boom, shalom, is to deal the lashna gaula. Oh, Roshid of Ahawalia, oh, Roshid of Ahawalia, oh, Roshid of Ahawalia, and it's so lovely. mar salia, ogli armele mar Katie Faney Gwail nos Bonnet, Agus Curry Shead Ruger Gowla, Hup,
Thank you so much. I'll get my lovely fiancée back in the microphone to help with this one. Come on, Andrea. Give applause for Andrea Delaney, everybody. Woohoo! I lied. You have one more job. You're going to sing the chorus of this song, okay? It wasn't just O Roshid of Ahawalia for you tonight. So this is the Tunnel Tigers, which was the name. Lots of people will know this song. It was the name of the workers who were building, the Irish workers who were building the first underground system. Probably the Victoria Line, I suppose, was the first underground system over in England. They were known as the Tunnel Tigers. So the words, and it was Sean Keane who got a lot of flack for this. Someone came up and asked him about the jackets and the rabbits. But if anyone knows that song, the words are, up with the shield. So we're going to sing together, up with the shield. That's to protect the miners, of course. Jack it, ram it. Not jackets and rabbits, but it might help you remember the words to sing it. So it's a working song, so you're going to do the chorus. Do you want to do one chorus with everybody? Give us a yeah. And up with the shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London clay. Now the sound man might turn us off at any point in time, right? So it's on you guys then, all right? So this is the Tunnel Tigers. Hope you enjoy.
Hares run free on the Wicklow mountains, wild geese fly and foxes play. Sporting boys from Wicklow County are driving a tunnel through the London clay. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London's clay. Tunnel through the London clay. One more time. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London clay.
Up their trout grow fat and lazy, salmon sport in Cushla Bay. The fishermen of Connemara, driving a tunnel through the London clay. Shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London clay. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London clay.
Tunnel tigers, far from light and sun in the day. Down in the land where the sea once buried, they're driving a tunnel through the London. Let's hear you play. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London. Hey, let's hear you. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it. One more time, just you, let's hear it.
With the shield, jacket, driving a tunnel through the London.
Last time, just you.
With the shield, jacket,
Let's hear the pipes. Dark are the tunnel tigers, far from the sun and the light of day. Down in the land where the sea once buried, they're driving a tunnel through the last time now. Let's hear it. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it, drive a tunnel through the London clay. Up with the shield, jacket, ram it, driving a tunnel through the London clay. Thank you so much. Can we do one more song for you? One more. Thank you so much. I wish they came home and built an underground system here, but we won't. Anyway, so we want to leave you with something very special to us. This is a song. Would you like to say anything about it, Andrea?
It's a good Nordy song.
Yeah.
This is called County Down. but a voice keeps calling, and you hear your name. It's not the leaves or the whispering breezes. It's me that's calling you back again. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me as you roam through lonely London town? When evening's falling, you hear me calling. Come on home to the county down. Do you remember the fiddlers playing the songs and stories the whole night long? It's bitter that you thought of leaving. It feels so strange now that you are gone. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me as you roam through lonely London town? When evening's falling, you hear me calling. Come on home to the county down. The fish are dancing on Clanry River. The teams are sporting in old Glenville. My heart no longer can lead the cheering. When you're not playing, it's a different beat. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me as you roam through London town? Evening's falling, you hear me calling. Come on home to the county down. I'm always thinking that things are changing and that they're building a factory tall. The young ones needed again in Newry, but I still need you the most of all. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me as you roam through lonely London town? When evening's falling, you hear me calling. Come on home now to the county down. Come on home to the county down.
Thank you. We are Faro. Follow us along on Instagram, Faro Ireland. This has been an absolutely beautiful evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
please give a huge welcome to John Callum.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. I'm going to start with a little verse here by William Morris. Somebody, I'm afraid, in Britain today is more famous for his National Trust tea towels and old flock wallpaper, rather than for the fact that he was an artist, a writer, a linguist, and a man of great socialist vision. And his little verse goes as follows: "The poets have fashioned and the builders have builded. The painters have fashioned the tales of delight. But for whom and for what was the world's book gilded?" And that question posed in his last line is something in a few minutes tonight, as I talk to you, I hope we can explore together. So I'm going to bring you a tale of bread, and I'm going to bring you a tale of roses. And like all tales, it begins with a dream, an ideal, and a vision. If you had been travelling through the back roads, the highways of southern England in the second half of the 1890s, if you were lucky enough, you might have come across an amazing cavalcade, a brightly painted caravan, stark red, a gilded sun bearing the moniker of socialism rising on its side. Its windows were stained glass. Pinned to its sides were all manner of pamphlets, probably including the pamphlet that contained the words of Morris that I've just read to you. It had a little stage that came out from behind so that the workers, the agitators, the first generation of socialists could speak to people right across the land and spread the new word. It was designed by Walter Crane. You can still see the designs. I'm afraid the caravan no longer survives, but you can see photographs of it and his original sketches in the People's History Museum in Manchester. It must have been a wonderful thing, the combination of art, theory, and a dream for a better tomorrow. Crane was remarkable. I think he gave the British and the Irish movement its first imagery. He was a man who worked for high society, who is well known for his illustrated fairy tales for children, who exhibited at the Royal Society of Arts, who had all kinds of fashionable clients and commissions. An insider, if you like, but who worked for the movement for free. Think of the union's early banners. Very many of them were designed by Crane. His cartoons for the cause portraying a vision, an ideal, and an imagery that actually the movement still enjoys and still celebrates right down to this day. And Crane was an expression of a remarkable force, short-lived party, the Social Democratic Federation, the SDF, that blazed a bright, although sometimes unremarked trail across the history of socialism in these lands. Let me give you a brief overview of its countercultural impact. It never had a great deal of members, it wasn't strong numerically, but it boxed well above in terms of its influence. You could find at its meetings at one time or another Edward Carpenter, the poet, pioneer of gay liberation in these isles. You could find Annie Besant, Eleanor Marx, the Countess of Warwick, the pioneer of free school meals. And I think sometimes with the Countess, it's only our inward snobbery of the movement that doesn't allow her to be celebrated in the way that she should have been. Alongside them, there were so many people who had a view, a vision of the way society ought to be. You turn through the pages of its journal, Justice, you find adverts for vegetarian restaurants that were socialist in Liverpool in the 1890s. You'll find in its pages a little appeal on behalf of a working man who'd grown up in the slums of the Irish quarter of Edinburgh, who tried his hand as a bootmaker and it had come to nothing. James Connolly. It was the response to that advert in 1895 by Adolphus Shields, again, a fabulous and perhaps unduly forgotten figure, the leader of the Dublin gasworkers, that brought Connolly to Ireland. In that wonderful marriage between art, socialism, politics, Shields' sons would make the journey, like so many other Irish immigrants, to Hollywood, and they'd star in John Ford's cowboy movies. They'd had their apprenticeship just down the corner in the Abbey Theatre. Connolly is remarkable for so many things, so many different levels, but one of them surely is his appreciation of art, his appreciation of the written word. If you go to the National Library here in Dublin, you'll see the records, and amongst the records, his writings, his economy, the sense that every piece of paper and every pencil stub was valuable to a man who had grown up knowing no luxuries at all. He could put his thoughts down on paper perfectly, scarcely an erasure, scarcely a crossings out. It was all planned out advance in his mind. The hall we're in today bears testament to his ability to see that music, that art, that song, that dance were at the very core of a nation's soul and the recovery of its politics and its spirit. Though without formal education, he learned constantly. There was no cynicism. He appreciated Irish Gaelic culture, the Brehon law, his recovery of O'Carolan, the United Irishman. All these things he was to explore in this sense that for him and for many others, socialism had no bounds. Everything was up for discussion. Everything was new and a fresh creation. Let's go forward a little more than 5 decades to 1945, the great defining moment of British Labour history, Attlee's Labour government. Let's think about the cultural landscape at that time. Paul Robeson was recovering Othello for people of global majority heritage, talking after he came off the stage in London and New York of how Shakespeare's Othello was an African who came from a civilization as great as Renaissance Venice. At that time, if you put on a record by Billie Holiday, looked at a photo by Tina Modotti, heard a symphony by Shostakovich, went to the movies and saw something by Eisenstein or Chaplin, went to a theatre and saw a play by Brecht. Here in Ireland, the early works of Casey and Brendan Behan. They're all works to a greater or lesser extent that have a socialist commitment, a socialist vision. That combination of the bread and the roses that stirred souls and was capable of transforming the world and reality around us. I'd suggest that those key things, the total culture of a politics that could entertain, could educate, could inform and inspire, was key to the success of the movement that we know and love. Of course, we can also ask ourselves what went wrong. There are a number of things that I'll allude to quickly. Some of them were self-inflicted wounds. The other, I think, was an inability to see the importance of culture. If you look at 1945, that high point, what did the opponents of socialism, of political progress, start doing? They started throwing money at the arts. They started throwing money at economic theory. Naomi Klein does it far better than I could, but if you look at her book on the shock doctrine, her account of the evolution of neoliberal monetarist thinkers, it took them almost, 35 years or more before they actually achieved regime change. Nobody wanted to know. Social democracy was working. Socialism had the wind in its sails. It would take a bloody and brutal coup in Chile to create the conditions for a neoliberal shock society. And it would take that long and millions and millions and millions of dollars of paid hirelings to begin to transform culture into something less progressive and less democratic. In Britain, it happened remarkably quickly after the end of the Second World War. The first great political purge went on in the Army Education Corps almost after hostilities had ceased. Tended to be that those at the front line were committed anti-fascists, people like James Klugman, who was involved after the war with the UN Relief Agency in the Balkans, in what was then Yugoslavia. Bill Alexander, the hero, the commander of the British battalion in Spain, who was decorated at the Battle of Monte Cassino. These were people who were quickly and quietly removed. The BBC went through a purge. J.B. Priestley, who might not be today well remembered, but who I'd certainly put among the socialist pantheon of authors, was quietly dropped by the BBC due to paid informers. His broadcasts on socialism, on the Russian front, were too unwelcome, and he was sidelined and then suffered perhaps the greatest fate for any artist. He was condescended to by the literary establishment. Read his evocation of music hall at the time of Tressell, Lost Empires. It's playing on two things, the theatres being empires and the war, the imperialist war of 1914 that changed everything, shattered the hopes and dreams of many, and certainly Tressell had he lived. To wind up, I think, I'd say that we cannot allow ourselves to fall into a state of what might have been. But I think we need, without getting mawkish about it, to recognize that there are different types of poverty. There's absolute poverty that we see in the global south. Starvation, malnutrition, all of these things. There is also the relative poverty that comes from a generation of children who do not have access to the arts, to libraries. What's more democratic than a library? As somebody said the other day, it's the only public space you can go to where you're not expected to spend money. Now, how revolutionary, how forward-thinking is that? And this poverty takes its toll. You know, think about Virginia Woolf's study of Shakespeare's sister. The idea that had Shakespeare had a sister and she'd have been as brilliant as he, would she have been remembered? And of course, her answer is positively not. Look at the way I'd suggest as well, if we look at Shakespeare himself, there's a whole strain of academic theory that tries to pretend that somebody who came from the people, who seems terribly unremarkable in his biography, could have done what he did. Couldn't it have been Marlowe? Couldn't it have been Lord Stanley? Couldn't it have been any aristocrat with a wonderful background instead of a man of the people? Well, you know, it was Shakespeare, folks. So, we should always be a movement of optimism. An optimism that unites. An optimism that means that culture, just as Tressell said, isn't beyond us, but is part of us. It's the bread, it's the roses, it's the hope, it's the thing that binds us through the dark times. Just as regiments have their banners that they can cling to during the storm of battle, the movement has its own iconography, its own banners, bearing our own battle honours and the images of our own heroes. We're a young movement, we're a young ideal. Scarcely a century separates us from Tressell. We've much to learn, but we've come an awful long way. So to conclude, comrades and friends, and I'm using that term specifically, Harry Pollitt, one of the great leaders of the British movement, Boilermaker from my neck of the woods up in Lancashire, always used to start and finish his speeches with those words. And he always used to say that it was his hope that everybody who'd listened to him that night would be a friend and a comrade, because every friend should be a comrade and every comrade should be a true friend. That's why events like this in Liberty Hall, with the wonderful artists, a new generation of musicians, of actors, we saw the great evocation of Larkin earlier today, is so important to us. It's our lifeblood. It's not tangential. It's what we do to make this world a far better place. I can hear the Internationale playing. That's part of it, you know? But that was, you know, when Lenin rocked up in Petersburg on his train, the band didn't know how to play the Internationale, so they played the Marseillaise instead. But that sense of internationalism, the Marseillaise that united the United Irishmen with the French, with Toussaint Louverture, with the black slaves who were freeing themselves in Haiti, that's all part of our wonderful tapestry. And it's a tapestry of hope. And I'll leave you with this. Think about the last couple of paragraphs in Tressell's great book. He uses the metaphor of Barrington's red scarf waved out of the train window, yeah? Streaming away like a banner, tattered and torn in the breeze, but still fluttering, giving us hope. We'll have succeeded, we'll all have succeeded, if we don't let that banner go out of sight as the train disappears around the corner, but we keep it with us and we raise it high for better days ahead. Thank you, friends. Thank you, comrades. Good night.
My pleasure to introduce our next guest, Owen Reedy, who is the General Secretary of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions since 2022. So can you please give a warm welcome to Owen. How are you doing? You all right?
Yep, this is a great festival. It's wonderful to be here.
It's
Super.
absolutely fantastic,
Brilliant.
isn't it?
Yep.
And it's amazing that there's some, I've seen some kids as well floating about today, which is always encouraging to see. But Owen will get stuck right into it. So you were appointed to your role, General Secretary of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions in 2022. What challenges have you faced since taking on the role?
Well, it's been an incredibly challenging time, Liz, but a really exciting time. Coming out of COVID, I suppose there was a lot of talk about essential workers, and I think many of the employers, we know they were hollow words, you know, retail workers, cleaners, they've gone back to the way it was. We need to change that. In Northern Ireland, and I think it's important to say that because we're an all-island body, I'm really proud that our movement is a truly cross-community, all-island body. I think that's part of our strength. If you look in the last 2 years, we've had huge strikes in Northern Ireland. Like our colleagues here in Britain, and the workers have won. You've had workers from different traditions and none standing together on the picket lines, fighting for fair pay and actually demanding that their local government returns, and they've been successful. And I actually think it just shows when we harness what we have, just how powerful we can be. So it's a very interesting time. I think we're at an inflection point in Ireland. We've many challenges, but I think we need to remember, notwithstanding those challenges, we are the largest civic society organisation on this island with over 760,000 members. And if we pool and harness that energy, I think there's nothing we can't do.
And I was talking to you earlier on, there was a report that was done recently by UCD. Can you just tell us about the findings? Because there's something really interesting about younger people. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, and I think President Higgins was alluding to this earlier on. There's a wonderful piece of research by a couple of academics in UCD called Union Voice in Ireland. I'd encourage people to read it. It's a very short piece, but a really fascinating piece. Because people need to remember, in the Republic of Ireland today, the employer has a veto as to whether workers can get collective bargaining or not. Whether we organise 30%, 60% or 90% of a firm, we have two ways of getting collective bargaining. The power of persuasion, we persuade the employer to talk. And when that doesn't work, and it usually doesn't work, we have to use the persuasion of power. We have to have a strike. So Ireland is quite a hostile place for workers to access collective bargaining. But what this study shows, and I think it's a huge inspirational piece of research for us. It shows that 44% of workers not in a union today in the Republic of Ireland want one. They would vote for one. More inspiringly, 67% of 16 to 24-year-olds across all classes, across all sectors of the economy, at work today, not in a union, want one. So we have to, I think, finish the work to make this place truly a republic and remove that veto once and for all from the employer so that every worker who wants to join a union, who wants to access collective bargaining, can do so. There's demand for it, and we have to make sure we force that change so that those workers get that demand.
So you've mentioned that directive on collective bargaining. Yeah. So it's coming from the EU, but is our government actually going to enact that?
Well, when people say things like it comes from the EU, I would say it comes from workers and trade unions who fought for this right across the EU, including in this country. Many people who went before this current generation have fought for this. It's a really good directive. It means that the state, if they implement it properly, has to promote collective bargaining. Think how transformative that would be. The state has never promoted collective bargaining. We have a situation in Ireland where there are companies that in Britain, in France, in Germany, in Spain, even in the States, recognize unions and talk to their workers through their union. When they land at Dublin Airport, there must be something in the air, something in the atmosphere. And they just don't do unions when they come here. And why is that? It's because they don't have to. There's a classic example right now, one of our unions, the Communications Workers Union. They represent essential workers in the 999 call centres. Those workers deal with Gardaí, Dublin Fire Brigade, the ambulance service. The private sector workers, the contracts with BT, it's publicly procured, it's state money. BT deal with a union up the road in Northern Ireland and in Britain, but they won't talk to the union here. Why? Because they don't have to. So we have to force this government and future governments to change that, to implement this directive. We can't have a situation like we've had before where Irish governments are good boys and girls in Brussels and put their hand up and say, yes, we'll follow the line, but when they come back to Dublin say, no need to do this. We have to force them to do it.
And with the local elections and European elections coming up, I haven't really heard anyone talk about this, as in any political figures in the mainstream saying this is a priority. So should we, when they're knocking on the doors, should we be saying, what are you going to do about it?
Of course we should. We should do it at this election and we should do it in every other election. But I think what we really need to do, we have 45 trade unions in our Congress. And I think like never before, we need to build a coalition of public and private sector unions to mobilise, to campaign, to agitate, to organise, to push really, really hard for this directive to be a reality. Because we can't have a situation where hundreds of thousands of workers, citizens of this state, are effectively locked out of co-determining their future at work. The President talked about democratic participation and the trade union movement being a key part of that, and he's 100% correct. And this is unfinished business. So there's an opportunity here for us all to push this home. I think we have to make this the fight of our lifetime. We have to make this the issue of the moment. We have to be relentless. We have to be persistent. And we have to be awkward. And we have to make sure whoever is the next government that we hold their feet to the fire and make sure they implement this. Workers working in Ireland, wherever they come from, if they call Ireland their home and they want to be in a union, and we know they do, many of them do, they should have that right. They shouldn't have to cross the threshold of strikes or being sacked for union activity and jeopardizing their careers. If they want it, they should get it. Yeah.
So how do we get that strength, bringing people together to actually make sure the governments do?
Well, I think we have to recapture that kind of sense. We saw it in the trade union movement during COVID, where I think we looked at groups of workers that were forgotten about in the past. Everyone thought essential workers were, firefighters, nurses, doctors, and of course they are. But there's so many other essential workers, many private sector workers, many low-paid private sector workers, many women in private sector work, and many young people. And I think we have to reach out to them, and I think we have to be their allies. We have to work with them, but we have to listen to them. Yeah. We shouldn't lecture them. We shouldn't take it that we have all the answers, but we build a coalition with them and we bring them into our movement. But for that to happen, we have to remove that veto. That has to be the fight of our times.
Brilliant. Okay. We're on time, we're okay? I can ask a few, yeah, that's grand. So what would you like to see? So, where do you see the movement now, trade union movement now, but where would you like to see that go? and what are the possibilities for the trade union movement in Ireland? Like, can we have another, the way it is in England, the way Mick Lynch and so on has reinvigorated the union and brought it back into sort of mainstream political public life where people are aware of unions. How do we go about that here?
I think we take inspiration from Mick and his colleagues in Britain, but we also take inspiration from our colleagues up the border in Northern Ireland. I mean, the work that they did, the coherent campaigning and agitation they did and the striking they did, and we take solace from that, and we use that type of approach when it comes to getting the directive. One of the things we need here, shop stewards in Ireland have no legal rights. Health and safety reps have rights. Shop stewards have no rights. They're the backbone of our movement. They're the backbone of the workplace. So we need to say to the government, this current government and any future government, and I don't think we should take anything for granted, whoever's in government. We have to rely on ourselves, not any one political party. But we need to get them into a place where they sign up to this directive, where they sign up to primary legislation that will level the playing pitch, and then we need to make sure that we're fit for purpose to play the match. We need to make sure that we are ready to engage with the tens and hundreds of thousands of young workers who've not been in a trade union, to make sure that they feel when they come into our movement that it's their home and that they can take the rightful place in it.
Well, on that note, Owen, it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible. There is a big fight ahead, but it isn't an unachievable goal. So
nothing in our history, Liz, that has been worthwhile has come easy and has come without struggle, and this one won't be either, but it will be worth it when we get it. That's for sure.
Everyone, Owen Reading. Thanks so much, Joe. So now I think yous are set up, are yous?
I hope so.
Good. Okay, so everyone, we've now got a bit more music. So again, sit back, relax, and I'm going to introduce Darrell Lynch of the award-winning group Lancome. He was brilliant at Folk Awards. And Iona Zajac. So everyone, enjoy.
Thank you. Hello. In 1592, there was an ongoing feud between the Earl of Huntly and the Mackintosh clan in the northeast of Scotland. And basically, the Mackintoshes we were on the side of the Mackintoshes because they're like of the people. And the Earl of Huntly was an evil landlord. And it culminated in this bloody night in 1592 where the Mackintoshes went and burnt the fuck out of the Earl of Huntly's castle. So this is the burning of Auchindoun. As I come in by FedEx side on a May morning, I spied Willie Mackintosh and knew for the dawning. Turn, Willie Mackintosh, turn again, I bid ye. If ye burn Auchindoun, Huntly he will heed ye. Heed me or hang me, that will never fear me. I'll burn Auchindoun for the life it leaves me. As I come in by seaside on a May morning, Auchindoun was in a blaze, hear the crows crowing, growing, growing, for all your crows growing, they've burnt your crops and tinged your wings, and nearer for the dawning. Bonnie Willie McIntosh, where left ye all your men? I left them in the stable, but they'll ne'er come hame. Bonnie Willie McIntosh, where left ye all your men? I left them in the stable, sleeping in their shin. Light was the marker at the day dawning,
Thanks very much.
Oh, Polly, love, oh, Polly, the rout has now begun, and we must go a-marching to the beating of the drum. Go dress yourself all in your best and come along with me. I'll take you to the war, me love, in high Germany. Oh, Willie, love, oh, Willie, come list what I do say. My feet, they are so tender, I cannot march away. And besides, my dearest Willie, I am with child by thee, not fitting for the war, me love, in high Germany. I'll buy for you a horse, me love, and on it you shall ride, and all of my delight shall be in riding by your side. We'll stop at every ale house and drink when we are dry. Be true to one another, get married by and by. Of course it be these cruel wars that ever they should rise, and out of merry England press many's a man likewise. They pressed my true love from me, likewise my brothers three, and sent them to the war, me love, in high Germany. My foes I do not value, my friends I do not fear. Since my true love has left me, I'll wander far and near. And when my baby it is born and smiling on my knee, I'll think of lovely William in high Germany. Oh, Polly, love, oh, Polly, the rout has now begun, and we must go a-marching to the beating of the drum. Go dress yourself all in your best and come along with me. I'll take you to the war, me love, in high Germany.
That was on purpose. This is a song I'd say that Dara and I wrote together, actually. But we very rarely perform together, so I'm not able to say that very often. I should say it even when I'm on my own. But Dara would quite often make up like joke verses for it, and then I heard him sing one, and I was like, that's actually really good.
I dream of you this morning. You said I should go. That then are fully growing. Tells us what to show. Some are loyal to you, some loyal to their need for you. Summer will come soon. Some may weep for you, some die in their sleep for you. Summer will come soon. Emily held a gun, felt a funeral, but she mislaid the day when her head found that pain. Some are loyal to you, some loyal to their need for you. Summer will come soon. Some may weep for you, some die in their sleep for you. Summer will come soon. Some are loyal to you, some loyal to their need for you. Summer will come soon. Some may weep for you, some die in their sleep for you. Summer will come soon.
This is an old song about prison labour.
We were trying to think of an upbeat one for our set, and that's what we came up with.
Step in, young lad, I know your face, it's not something in your favour. A little time I'll give to you, 6 months unto hard labour. Hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. At 6:30 our turkey comes in with a bunch of keys all in his hand. Come me boys, step up and grind the wheel to turn till breakfast time. With me hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. At 8 o'clock our skilly comes in. It's sometimes thick and it's sometimes thin, but the devil a word we dare not say, or it's bread and water all next day. Hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. At 8:30 the church bell rings. It's on our mending to the chapel we do fall. May the Lord have mercy on us all. With me hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. At 9 o'clock the jangle rings, and it's on the trap boys we do spring. Come me boys, step up and grind the wheel to turn and the contact grind. Hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. Now Saturday's here, I'm sorry to say. Sunday is our starvation day. Our hobnail boots and our tin plates too, they are not clean and this will not do. Hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. Now 6 long months are over and past, and I'll return to me bonny, bonny lass. Leave the turnkeys all behind, the wheel to turn and the contact grind. Hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o. Hip for the day, hip for the day, hip for the day, for the doigie-o.
Thanks. Do I have to do that?
Mary Queen of Scots had 4 ladies in waiting, and apparently they were all called Mary as well. And this is an old Scottish murder song about one of those Marys. And basically, in the song, in the story, one of the Marys was taken advantage of by Lord Darnley, who was Mary Queen of Scots' second husband, who was a total bastard. And she is executed as a result. So it's a classic tale of, the person in power having no comeuppance and the worker, facing the consequences. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having us. And this is the 4 Marys. That's really loud though.
Yestreen the Queen had 4 Marys, the night she'll have but 3. There's Mary Seaton and Mary Beaton and Mary Carmichael and me. My father a bonny young me, and the king fell in love with me. The king was kind with his kisses, and his wine, it was so sweet that I became a mother before I was 15. Oh, tell the truth now, Mary, the Queen, she says to me, what have you made? The baby was greeting yesterday. Oh, I will tell you, madam, I will not tell a lie. I put it in a bottomless boat and bid it sail the sea. You lie now, Mary, so loud I hear you lie. You were not out of the palace, so that could never be. Oh, I will tell you, madam, though it should gar me weep, I killed it with my knife so small and bid it take a sleep. Oh, when she came up the nether bow, she gave loud laughter sweet. But when she came to the parliament, the tears blinded her eye. Oh, little will my mother know, oh, the death I am to die. For muckle will be the sorts of tears that will be shed for me. Oh, little will my brothers ken, oh, the death I am to die. For muckle will be the red, red blood that will be shed for me. After I wash the king's bonny face, calm down his yellow hair, and this reward is given me, the gallows be my share. Yes, train the Queen had for Marys, the night she'll have but 3. There was Mary Seaton and Mary Beaton and Mary Carmichael and me.
Paddy, are you standing up there? All right. You have to tell them what you learned.
We're going to finish now with a song that I learned last week, or not last week. I sung it last week as part of the Pogues' 40th anniversary of Red Roses for Me. And Spider Stacey from the Pogues asked me to sing Poor Paddy, and it was really weird to be asked to do that by him. Anyway, I did, and I'm going to sing it tonight because it feels very relevant, especially to sing it to Mick Lynch. It's not quite the same without the Pogues backing you, but I'm just going to do it a cappella.
In 1841, the corduroy breeches I put on. Me corduroy breeches I put on to work upon the railway, I'm weary of the railway. Poor Paddy works on the railway. In 1842 from Hartlepool I moved to Crewe. Found myself a job to do, working on the railway. I was wearing corduroy breeches, digging ditches, pulling stitches, dodging pitches. I was working on the railway. In 1843 I broke the shovel across my knee. Went to work for the company on the Leeds to Selby Railway. I was wearing corduroy breeches, digging ditches, pulling stitches, dodging pitches. I was working on the railway. In 1844 I landed on the Liverpool shore. My belly was empty, my hands were raw, with working on the railway, Do you sing it? I'm sick to my guts of the railway. Poor Paddy works on the railway. In 1845 when Daniel O'Connell, he was alive. Daniel O'Connell, he was alive and working on the railway. I was wearing corduroy breeches, digging ditches, pulling stitches, dodging pitches. I was working on the railway. In 1846 I changed my trade to carrying bricks. Changed my trade to carrying bricks to working on the railway. I was wearing corduroy breeches, digging ditches, pulling stitches, dodging pitches. I was working on the railway. In 1847, poor Paddy was thinking of going to heaven. The poor bugger was thinking of going to heaven to work upon the railway, I'm sick to my death of the railway. Poor Paddy works on the railway. I was wearing corduroy breeches, digging ditches, pulling stitches, dodging pitches. I was working on the railway.
Thank you very much. Thanks to
Thanks very much.
I am delighted to interview the next two people, our next two guests. They both don't need an introduction, but we are going to give them one anyway. Jeremy Corbyn, who, as Scott said earlier, is the moral leader of the British Labour movement and who is a huge inspiration to people still across the world. And one of those that he is actually inspired by is Chris Smalls, who is the founder and president of the Amazon Labour Union. So, will you please welcome to the stage Chris Smalls and Jeremy Corbyn. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And Chris,
Thank you for a great show tonight. Fantastic.
So here, look, we'll just get straight into it because you are two very inspirational people. And Jeremy, if I can start with yourself, why do you think that people have been inspired by your activism? And Chris, I'm sure you would have been one of those people. And likewise, Jeremy, you've been inspired by Chris.
Well, thanks for the question. It's not my activism, it's the activism of millions of people. If you unlock the door and give people space and hope to realize they can achieve fundamental change, then lots of things develop from that. It's when you shut down activism, shut down activity, prevent people participating in doing something, you end up with depression in our movement. And so that's why when I spoke earlier, I used the words of Connolly about if you want to bring about political change, it starts in your own community, it starts in your own life, it starts with the people that are doing the job day in, day out and working. But it's also a principle of how people are able to contribute, because I had some interesting times as leader of the Labour Party. You all observed those. And I had some interesting challenges, most of them from within rather than without. And the real argument that I got from the longer-term guard in the Labour movement, not all of them, but some, was that they really didn't want a mobilized activist base that was developing its own policies and its own ideas. And what I found fascinating was that everywhere I went, to trades councils, local Labour parties, lots and lots of other groups and things, was that people were studying their own past, studying their own history, and taking the lessons from it. So it was a period of renewal. And what's inspired me today, if I may say, I'll finish on this, has been that you've brought together the brilliance of the history of the struggle of Irish Labour, the history of the struggle of national identity of Ireland, but also, crucially, you've linked it to the international struggles in Gaza and so many other places. Politics is local and global at the same time, and you've managed today to bring both those forces together. Well done. Thank you.
And Chris?
Yeah, my story is a little different. I definitely was inspired visiting London for the first time. You know, the first name that came up was Jeremy. And I was fortunate enough to connect with the students of SOAS. And there was a convention there, and I met Jeremy for the first time. And all I kept hearing was, he's the people's champion. And there's no lies told in that. Every time I travel to London, you know, it seems like me and Jeremy for the last year, we linked up on several different occasions. And I'm always inspired to see that the youth, the younger generation, always praises and bring his name up, and we connect just naturally through the organizing efforts that we're both doing on across the ponds. And my story is different because I wasn't an organizer 4 years ago. I was an ordinary worker working for a $1 trillion company who y'all may know, Amazon. And I was fired for leading a walkout over COVID-19 the same day in front of my warehouse when New York City was the epicenter of the world. People were dying every 15 minutes. We were deemed essential workers, and as a supervisor for 4.5 years with the company, I felt it was my duty to speak up on the ones that I was supervising. And unfortunately, the company felt to pretty much be nonchalant about it. It took them about a week for them to get back to me with an answer. By that time, I was already organizing a walkout. So on March 30th of 2020, I led a walkout over COVID at my now unionized facility, JFK 8. And I was fired I was fired the same day, publicly, because I pretty much found out while I was doing an interview on national TV. And I'm the only Amazon worker in the 30 years of its existence to be fired over the phone. They don't call people, but they called me and terminated me. So that lets you know whatever I was whistleblowing on was true. I cost the company $4 billion the next day. You know, Jeff Bezos has it, though. He's the richest man in the world, making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, almost $5,000 a second. So he has more money than 10,000 lifetimes. He has more money than the entire bottom half of the American workforce. And this man signed off on a smear campaign calling me not smart or articulate, and also, ironically, to make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts against Amazon. So I said, hey, that's a good idea. So that, you want to know who inspired me? He did.
Yeah, he didn't think that one through, did he?
Well, whoever, whoever his advisors are, they failed him.
Big time. You've both mentioned the youth, and my God, looking across the world, the youth are standing up because we are at this moment witnessing the greatest human catastrophe in our lifetime, certainly this generation's lifetime. And Chris, you've been visiting the college campuses. We've seen the victory that the Trinity students had here today, or had here the last couple of days. And both of these, I suppose this question is directed at. It seems like it's a helpless or a hopeless situation because people are out in the streets. People are protesting. They are speaking up for the people of Gaza, of Palestine. They want change, but it just seems that the people in power are ignoring us. The students have had some victories, but in America, there's huge difficulty. What is your message to them?
Well, I can relate. I spent 300 days in a tent across the street at a bus stop. It took me 11 months to unionize Amazon. So we're talking a few weeks. Think about that. What they've done in a few weeks. Going into, I believe, now is maybe 2 months of encampments. And I was at Columbia day one. I was at Columbia for a few days. I've seen several things there. Didn't see any anti-Semitism at all. Very peaceful demonstrations. It reminded me of everything that I did outside of the building of JFK in my encampment. Music, culture, prayer, bringing people together, eating, breaking bread, bringing the community in. That's what they're doing at these encampments. And not only did I visit Columbia, I visited one of the most violent encampments was Austin, Texas. I went down there, very peaceful. Then from there, I went up to Toronto, and they're doing an excellent job holding it down at UT. And then from there, I went to Vancouver, BC, where they're holding it down. And I've been fortunate enough to be invited onto these campuses by the students. And as a labor leader, I felt it's necessary, for a labor leader as myself to take a stance, and not just me. Other labor unions need to do the same exact thing. We should be at the forefront of these fights. So you know, I'm just trying to play my role and amplify their efforts, but also, you know, build that bridge. You know, the students are the working class. They're going to graduate and become workers. They are workers. And when you're talking about Palestine and Gaza, they're workers too. The women and children, the families there, they're workers too. And I've been fortunate enough to have conversation with Dr. Mustafa Bugatti, who's one of the former MPs of Palestine. And I know that our struggle is their struggle. And for us to, you know, to be in a position to stand up for them, we have to take this opportunity.
Jeremy, just before Chris actually now gives a speech, would you like to?
The growth of the student movement in support of Palestine is absolutely phenomenal. It's grown even faster than the student movement did in support of Vietnam in the 1960s, which was quite a slow burning fuse for a very long time. And this is phenomenal, particularly what's happened in the American universities and the threats that have been made against them. And when I saw those pictures of a sniper standing on the roof of a university while the students are protesting peacefully about Palestine down below, I just had this horrible flashback to Kent State, Ohio in 1970, when students were shot dead for protesting about the Vietnam War. And I was at the SOAS camp on Wednesday this week. Great, totally peaceful, very well organized, very respectful of everybody, and very interesting discussions and teaching going on there. So it's a movement that's growing very fast. Also, we should just bear some mind to what the Palestinian Union said. The General Federation of Trade Unions in Palestine asked us not to allow weapons and military equipment to be shipped to Israel. Some places, some unions backed that call, and I think we need to give a big shout out to the unions in Australia that stopped the transport of equipment there, likewise those in Italy that did exactly the same. Because it is, at the end of the day, this practical solidarity that's going to make a difference. We've so far had 14 national demonstrations in the UK, in London. I've been to events all over the UK and many other places as well in support of the Palestinian people. And despite the best efforts of Sunak and Braverman and so on to describe the London marches of hate, they obviously haven't been on them, and they obviously haven't read the police reports on them. Totally peaceful, incredibly well organized, very diverse, large numbers of people there from the Jewish community, Jewish Voice for Labour, Jewish Socialist Group, and a number of Orthodox Jewish groups that marched as well. Very large Jewish bloc, very large Muslim contingent, many Christians, many of no particular faith whatsoever. They weren't ever, and never would be, marches of hate. They were marches of solidarity and of love for humanity, and demanding that the bombardment stops, and demanding we stop feeding the Israeli war machine that's killing so many people.
Okay, Chris, the floor is over to you, so you go and...
Oh, it's my turn.
Oh, this is it. We're here now to listen. You have to follow that speech that Jeremy just made, so...
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, that's my partner, so I share it equally. Well, you know, I wanted to get an opportunity to address the crowd because this is my first time in Ireland, so... You know, it's only right. First of all, I'm in front of the president, so I might have to ask for a citizenship soon. I don't know, man. Looking kind of shaky for the next 4 years. Well, why I have this energy? For those who are able to stand, can y'all please stand? Yeah, we need some energy. We need to wake up a little bit. If you want to stay down, you could. But if you're able to stand, please stand with me. Now I want you to do me a favor. Turn to your left, turn to your right, and say, I got your back. 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 Now, Now, while you're standing, moment of silence. I want a moment of silence so y'all can feel the energy in the room. Yeah, take that in because there's a lot in here. And when people ask when and how we were able to beat a $1 trillion company, my response is simple. No amount of money can amount to the power of people when we come together. Got it. Well, take your seats now. Now you can sit down. It's people power. The power of people. And when we beat Amazon, we had $2 in our account. No resources, no millions of dollars, no big union backing, no big political figures, no celebrities, none of that. They actually had the articles written that we lost the election. They had to change it 1 hour before the vote came out. I'm talking every major media publication in America. So just know that when they say that organizing these $1 trillion corporations are impossible, that is a myth. We've proven that we can do it. We can absolutely do it. Now, here's the problem. It's been 2 years since that happened. I know it felt like yesterday. It's been 2 years since we won. We don't even have a bargaining order in America because our laws are so weak. They haven't been touched since the 1930s. We just saw last year our president use the 1945 Act on the railroad strikers over sick days. We're in 2024, right? Make it make sense. Doesn't. So not just Amazon workers, Starbucks, Trader Joe's, Apple workers, Google workers, all these new unions that are formed, that had victories in the last 2 years, none of us have gotten our bargaining orders yet. That is a damn shame. Not only that, here's another shame. Big labor. Oh yeah, I'm calling y'all out. Big labor. When people want to ask me why haven't we affiliated? Well, I'll give you a few reasons. Amazon's been around for 30 years, so if they had plenty of time to get it done. But they failed. And the only way it was going to work had to be worker-led. So big labor, you have to understand this. The last 2 years, only 3% of resources went to smaller unions like myself and other campaigns. What are we doing? We're dwindling this opportunity. Yes, we made history in over a generation. That was 2 years ago. But what are we doing? We kicked in the door, and now it's time for everybody to storm that door. If we miss this opportunity, we won't get another one. I can tell you that right now. Because as we stand here today, we are still the only union in America for Amazon workers. And we are being crushed. Oh, it's a clap, but it's not, because we are being crushed. They are discrediting us. They're attacking me in the media now. I used to be the fired Amazon worker. Now I'm like the celebrity activist that globetrots because they don't understand grassroots organizing. And the reason why I'm here and not home is because I have to plant these seeds internationally. Because Amazon is an international company. Y'all know because they're here. They're here, right? They're here right up the road. And if they're not, they're coming. And they're going to continue to come and continue to reap the benefits from your community while your mom and pop and your favorite stores close down. Because we're giving all our money to Jeff Bezos. So understand that my fight is your fight and your fight is my fight. And I know that international solidarity is the only way that we're going to bring these corporations to their knees. So big labor, you guys have to support independent unions. just as much as you support one another. We are independent because we do not align with the Democratic Party. I'm sorry. And the reason why I say this, it's not an attack on Democrats and politicians. I'm speaking truth. You can't call ceasefire and then endorse Joe Biden. Can't do it. Make it make sense. My union, we invited every presidential candidate that ran against Joe Biden or who's running against Joe Biden, except for Trump. We ain't do that one. But what I'm saying is this. We need, and I'm talking to big labor again, the politicians that we endorse, that some of them are giving y'all union dues to, not us. If you're doing this, make sure these politicians are being held accountable. And I mean, when I mean accountable, not just showing up to a rally and taking photos. They need to use their pen and put some legislative in black and white so that we can organize the way we need to. And as I mentioned, the laws in America haven't been touched since 1930s. We're in 2024, right? The 21st century. I can go right over to Canada, right now to Vancouver, BC, where they have one of the most progressive laws in the entire country. It's called the card check. Imagine that, if we had something like that in every country. And let me explain what that is. It basically said, hey, you're a worker, you want a union? Go fill out this application. You got 50% of the workforce? Here's your union. There's no election, doesn't give the company millions of dollars to union bust, doesn't give them the opportunity to arrest organizers, to retaliate. They signed the card, it's called the card check, you got recognition. We need laws like that to make it easier for those who aren't in the labor movement to join the labor movement. Because right now in America, and I know it's a different lens from the outside looking in, union density is less than 6% in the private sector, and it's on a decline. In the public sector, it's less than 10%, and it's on the decline. So yeah, we pat ourselves on our back for the strikes and the UAW and the Teamsters and everything else. But that's not going to increase the union density in our country. We need laws, federal laws, that's going to help workers join the movement and hold corporations accountable. And that's what y'all need here as well, right? And as I listened to the speakers earlier, like one question came up, how do we basically, I guess, include the community, the younger generation, the students? Easy. Let's start by inviting them. Are they here? That's number one. We got to make sure that we're building an intergenerational, multicolor movement. We got to make sure that we are appealing. 'Cause let's be honest, talking politics and talking unionizing is boring as hell. If you'd have told me that I could look as cool as a rapper, as a union president, I would have been doing this shit a long time ago. Right? Let's be honest, I don't look like your typical union president, but that's a good thing. Because the younger generation, they think I look cool. You know? And that's great. That's great. But it's not about just looks and fashion, but it's about meeting people where they at. And where they at? They're at work. So if you're an organizer, not only do you have to meet them at work, you got to appeal to them. You got to relate to them. How do you do that? What are these younger kids talking about? What are they into? Sports, music, fashion, arts, culture. We had all of that here today. Imagine if the younger generation is here, in this room, performing the things that we like to enjoy, or enjoying the things that we like to enjoy together. It's not impossible. We just have to think outside of the box. Because organizing looks different now, you know? And that's something that I'm explaining and also leading by example. That this traditional style of organizing in the past is not going to work when you're going up against these trillion-dollar companies. The propaganda that they have, the money that they have is unmatched. So we have to create our own propaganda, and we have to create our own cultures right now within the movement. And it's going to look different. It's going to look different. But one thing's for sure, excuse my French, but we got to get these old dinosaurs, and I'm talking about dinosaurs. I'm talking about the ones that sit on their thrones and don't pass the torch. We got to get them out. Sorry. You're not there. Don't worry about that. When I mean by old dinosaurs, let me tell y'all, I got to apologize on behalf of America right now, because I was hot when Bernie Sanders came here to Trinity College and said, genocide makes me queasy. Get the fuck out of here. No way. So I apologize on behalf of America for one of our politicians coming over here and say Ireland, of all places, he was bugging for that, to come here and say genocide makes him queasy. Well, I can tell you what, politicians like that need to go. Your job is done, sir. We love you, we respect you, but when I talk about representation, even within labor, it's not there. I made my rounds, trust me. I just got my passport last year, and I done been to several countries. I know people been following. Several countries, met with plenty of unions. And when I meet with these unions, I see that the representation is still missing. It's not a bad thing. But there's some work that needs to be done. There's some conversations that need to be had. So we can look in this room right now. You can look at me on stage and say that we have to have these conversations immediately. Because if y'all want to bring younger generation, y'all want to bring younger people in, then we got to change the way we look and the way we move as well as labor. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because let me tell you, if we don't do it, the corporations will. They're starting right now. Did y'all know there's a Jeff Bezos Academy? There's a Jeff Bezos Academy. He's getting to the babies in Seattle right now. In the next few years, 1 out of every 4 Americans is going to work for this company. They already hired and fired the entire American workforce. So you're going to know somebody, if not be related to somebody, if not yourself, is going to work at Amazon in the next few years. This is real. And they own 75 other companies. So not only we have to go after them for accountability, we have to go after them for antitrust and monopoly. We have to go after them for workers' violations and federal laws that they're violating every day. And not only that, we have to give the means of production back to the people, because we're the ones who make them rich. And I'll leave y'all with this. Today is the 76-year anniversary of Nakba. It falls on the same day as James Connolly. And the same day as the Tressell Fest. So May 11th, and also today is International Kafaya Day. So there's a lot of history in this day alone. We cannot let this moment dwindle away. We can't let it pass. So I'm asking you guys and everybody in this room, are you going to fight back? Are you going to fight back? Because when we fight back, we what? When we fight back? When we fight back? When we fight back? Now look to your left and look to your right and say, I got your back. I got your back. I got your back. Thank you, y'all. Power to the people.
I just ask you all to bid farewell to our President, Michael D. Higgins, and his wife, Sabina. If you could all remain... If you can remain seated to allow the President to leave. And everyone, could I just say again, a huge, huge thank you to you all for coming here today, to all our speakers, to all our musicians, to everyone that helped make today possible. And let us remember those who have gone before us. Let us remember James Connolly tonight on the eve of his execution. And also let us remember the people of Palestine. Thank you.